member. I'm also of Ukiah descent and also have been working with the Ukiah tribe on their water systems and wells and upgrades. I just wanted to mention really quickly, and I appreciate the comments, but I just want to make sure that the concerns of most of the tribes in the valley do there are some concerns that about the relationship with the city, and so there is an interest, of course, to build that relationship up, and we hope that this would be a great way of doing that. And and I serve on the technical side of things, and will continue to, but I am also a tribal technical assistance coordinator working with the North Coast Resource Partnership, and so I'm part of a tribal engagement team. So we are engaging the tribes throughout the North Coast. So we are here as a resource. We have been. I was a part of the creating the scope for the facilitation services, but a lot of that, you know, was we were looking to be able to help out with that in some way. So just offering that, and just wanted to raise those concerns, but I appreciate the momentum moving forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other public comment online, we'll go back to the board and invite a motion on this item.
Agency to perform the administrative services per the professional services agreement with the City of Ukiah.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first by Gasca and a second by Bailey. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Member Gasca.
Aye.
Member Bailey.
Aye.
Vice Chair Crane.
Aye.
Chair Klein.
Aye. Great, we will now move on to 4B. Congratulations, Maya. Welcome.
Thank you.
Receive financial report for fiscal year to date as of 2025-2026. Turn again to our general manager.
Thank you. As I said, we were able to transfer in to the QuickBooks and update all of the invoicing through, well, they're current, but these reports are printed through the end of the calendar year, which is the first and second quarters for the agency. And we were pleased to see that everything is tracking about where it's supposed to be. There are a couple of anomalies, mostly and notably that the grant reimbursements from CDFW are taking about 45 days to process. So you're not seeing that revenue come in yet, which is making on the profit and loss sheet in the third column under budget, it's making that number look negative, but we're waiting on a grant reimbursement to turn that around. So you'll see that come in by the time we meet again for, bless you, our next set of reporting. Other items to note would be that the cheater apportionment has been applied to the finances. The check from the City of Ukiah has been applied along with the IRWA membership, and we also made sure to get all of the customer invoicing sent out. It's about 40 invoices that went out, and about 40 calls that came back in about them. So we're getting all of those out and caught up. I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess the only other thing to point out, and later in the agenda we're going to be hearing from Larry Walker Associates. They have a couple of three actually really large projects that are built into this budget, and what I've asked for them to do is to give us an estimate of how much of the financial impact is actually going to fall in this fiscal year, because we don't anticipate maximizing all of those funds, which will also help make sure that we're going to be coming in at a good, safe budget number. So, are there any questions about these reports?
Any questions?
No. Thank you. I like them.
Yeah. easy to walk through, and looking forward to having regular financial updates throughout the year. So, all right, seeing no other comments or questions from the board, we'll look for public comment. Seeing none in the room, is there any online?
No hands raised online.
Ready for this, we will just see, yeah. No action is required, so we will move on to item 4C. Discussion and possible action related to the appointment of 2 board members to serve on an ad hoc budget committee to work with the general manager on development of the fiscal year 26-27 budget and related financial planning matters. Again, we'll turn over to our general manager for this item.
Thank you. Since we're talking about money, we might as well start talking about planning for the next budget year. And I would appreciate the board taking action and appointing 2 board members to start working with me on that project. We anticipate needing to meet 1 to 3 times between March and June in order to prepare that budget. We need to align the budget with the PMAs for the agency and the periodic evaluation that's coming up, and making sure we get that work accomplished on time and with the consultants that we are working with. And so this would be a great meeting if we could establish that and not get behind on budget development.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this forward at our first board meeting of this calendar year. I think that's the appropriate time to establish. I think that this format has worked well for us in the past, having the ad hoc, so open up for questions, comments, and interested board members.
I would be interested in serving on that ad hoc.
I'm interested. I'm just worried that I don't have enough time to do the duties well. Being on the school board and having a full-time job and 2 kids makes it really. Anybody else is up for doing it.
Yeah.
I have a longer list than you do.
I'm happy to serve if you would prefer that, Director Bailey. You let me know where you're landing.
Just coming into this role,
Yeah.
So 1 to 3 meetings. Any idea outside of scheduling in those meetings in the next few? Like how much help we can provide or will do for?
I think that I'll be able to be very concise in what I bring to the ad hoc for recommendations. I do think we'll probably at least need to meet twice so we can introduce, review, discuss, and then come back if there are any additions to be made. This isn't a huge budget. There aren't that many things we're going to be able to tackle this year because of the periodic evaluation. So I'll be very respectful of your time, and we can correspond via email in between meetings, I'm assuming, with the ad hoc if that's the direction. But I don't see how we get away with not at least meeting twice.
Well, I know it's an important time. I appreciate you stepping in and taking this on and figure out how to do it.
Okay, thank you.
If you're not comfortable, Director Bailey, I'm happy to do it. So it's really up to you on how you'd like to proceed. We don't want to pressure you. We appreciate your, time on the board.
Yeah, no, I mean, I also feel like, fairly familiar coming from our flood control district and working on these matters, so.
All right, it looks like we have nominations of Director Gasca and Bailey. Let's see. Speak into the mic.
I move the election of those 2 members who volunteered.
I'll second that.
All right, and before we take a vote, let's go to public comment.
See no hands raised.
All right, and seeing none in the room, we have a motion by Crane, a second by Gasca, and we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Member Gasca,
Aye.
Member Bailey,
Aye.
Vice Chair Crane,
Aye.
Chair Klein.
Aye. Thank you, both of you, for your service on the ad hoc. Moving to 4D, we'll look for our presenters from Larry Walker and Associates, provide water year 25 GSP annual report results, request approval for staff to submit to DWR pending any requested revisions from the board. Hi,
All
Audra.
right. Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. Thank you so much, Chair Klein. And please excuse me, I just got promoted to panelist, so let me get myself arranged here. And I will provide the board with a brief update on the conditions for water year 2025 and our key findings. And a complete draft was included in the agenda packet. And so let's go ahead and jump in. So just as a quick reminder, this is a regulatory requirement by DWR to comply with SGMA, and the GSA is required to submit an annual report each year after submission of the GSP. So this will be the 5th annual report, and that has to happen before April 1st. This is a bit of a self-assessment, an opportunity for the GSA to take a look at how the representative monitoring network is performing against the sustainability criteria that have been identified in the groundwater sustainability plan. Take a look at key developments that have taken place in GSP implementation, project management actions, and the like, and also take a look at the major water uses and demands in the basin. And again, this is going to be the last annual report before submission of the periodic evaluation in January of 2027. And so we'll be doing a lot of work and coordination with the staff, GSA staff, board, and TAC as we start gearing up and preparing for that submission. All right, I will not go through this. There's a lot of data that needs to be assembled and summarized for the annual report each year. We very much want to just call out and send our appreciation to all of the different partner and member agencies that coordinate with the technical team on this effort. We hugely appreciate it, and everyone got data in a timely manner this year, and we were able to get together a full draft for submission to the TAC in February. A quick look at what the precipitation conditions were like in the Basin region this last water year. So there was a recent critical drought that happened kind of in the early 2020, 2021, 2022 range. Since then, there have been 2 above normal years. This most recent year was considered wet, so above average precipitation in the basin. And we've seen that reflected in some of the conditions where there's kind of continued recovery of groundwater elevations since that recent critically dry period. The big overarching message that came out of this annual report is that when looking at all of those different sustainability indicators that are identified by SGMA, that there were no occurrences of undesirable results within the basin during water year 2025. And that is good news. It appears that the basin is on track to hopefully achieve sustainability in that 20-year time horizon that's called out by SGMA. There were some slight deviations below or above minimum or maximum thresholds, but those were limited instances. And again, per the definitions in the GSP, there was no occurrence of undesirable results. And so again, there's a lot more detail in the full draft of the annual report and the summary that we provided for the agenda packet. But to give you a sense of where sort of we are in terms of leading up to submission and the status, so a draft annual report and project management action tables were shared with TAC members in February so that they could review and provide input on any updates that they would like to see. Technical team did receive a few comments and updates that were not too serious. Those have been incorporated, and additional updates and improvements have been made to the draft since TAC reviewed in February. So the latest version shared with Board of Directors is in the agenda packet. Please feel free, if there are any additional questions or comments, to reach out to me. But at this time, that provides a general overview of conditions in the basin, and I will pass it along to General Manager Maya for the decision point.
Thank you, Audra, and I think we could open it up for questions if anyone on the board has questions before we move into a decision.
Comment, I appreciate the process going a little bit smoother this year, having an opportunity for the TAC to review their feedback and then it coming before the board ahead of the April 1st deadline. So just appreciate the coordination from an administrative point of view. Any other comments or questions from the board? Dr. Bailey.
Yeah, on the Ukiah Valley 1 well, that was the one that had the deviation below the minimum threshold, and it's adjacent to a public water withdrawal well. I'm just curious, and I'm trying to bring up the map, the
Would you like
location of Ukiah Valley 1.
Yeah, and also Sean or Jared might be able to explain it in layman's terms. Would either of you be able to? Because I'm not familiar with where it is exactly. I know there was an anomaly there, and we're hoping for not a second year of that, but that's as much as I know.
Is this on? Can't tell. Anyways, yeah, so this has been my drum I just won't stop beating. But what happened, this spot is on Lake Mendocino Drive, right near the West Branch of the Russian River. And when this site was selected as a monitoring well, it was essentially an abandoned well that hadn't been used, and all the criteria was set for those conditions. And then shortly after starting to use it as a monitoring well, Millview completed updating their nearby wells and started using them. So the conditions that you see now are not indicative of anything other than the conditions changing. It is not in any way reflective of over withdrawal or anything like that. It's that the measurements that were used for creating the baseline here are no longer applicable because the baseline has changed. When I started seeing these deviations initially, I was a little suspect because I kind of knew where this well was. And then later I actually traveled to that site, I believe with Jared, because we didn't have public access. And the old monitoring well and the now active municipal well, they're less than a tape measure away. And I mean, like a standard 25-foot tape measure, they're about 15 feet apart. So what you're really seeing is we're measuring the cone of depression from that well. You see it recovers in the winter. So we're really not measuring static groundwater in that location anymore. We're just measuring the operation of Millview's well. So it's really been my long-term soundtrack that we either need to reestablish criteria for this site that are reflective of the fact that it's now adjacent to an active well, or we need to just pick a new site and abandon this altogether. But as far as that old monitoring well being reflective of the baseline that was in place when it was established, that's gone.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I was curious is because that was during a wet year and the well's in an area where it seems like there might be effects of the water coming from Lake Mendocino in the East Branch. And so then if we're looking out to these significant changes with the Potter Valley project.
Well upstream of the effects of the East Fork. So this is the site of what was known as Waltufel, right, in flood control terminology, but is not influenced by Lake Mendocino, I don't think, literally at all. It's really being influenced by a well being turned off and on.
Thanks.
Yep.
So follow-up question, what needs to be done to reestablish the criteria or change the monitoring location?
I think if we want to reestablish the criteria, we now have a few years of fairly normal precipitation and ongoing operation. And I think if we want to use the data of the last few years for setting essentially a new baseline, it's a pretty decent array of years. And I can let Audra chime in on this. Otherwise, we need to look for another site that is in that region, but not immediately adjacent to an active well and start over. but I would do one of those two things.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean, for sharing some of the history for this location. We really appreciated you being able to go visit in person and really identify how very close the public supply well is that came back online, and we can absolutely see that impact in the data that's been collected. And fortunately, we have more detailed data that was collected since establishment of the GSB, so we have more information too that we could compare against pumping records, but the pattern is pretty clear. Our hope in the technical team, we've been discussing this a little bit, is that the periodic evaluations should provide a good opportunity for reassessing and really digging into some of the observations at this well and assessing what the best path forward is. So during periodic evaluation, the GSA has an opportunity to add representative monitoring points to its network, which also creates more of a buffer when we're looking at the occurrence of undesirable results, because more sites are in the network, and the definition of an undesirable result for lowering, excuse me, of groundwater level is more than 1/3 of sites falling below the MT for 2 years in a row. So that's one aspect of this. The other aspect is, just like Sean was saying, reconsidering a path where either the sustainable management criteria are recomputed, given additional data that have been collected and developing conditions nearby this observation well, or the option of no longer including it in the representative monitoring point network. I think our advice would likely be, of course, GSA staff need to make this decision and coordinate appropriately, but we think it would probably be good to have a conversation with DWR about the best path forward as we head into the periodic evaluation and assessment of the network.
I don't disagree with any of that. I think the only real mistake we could make is not do something about this. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to send sort of these alarming signals when the only real thing we're measuring is a change in condition and not a change in sustainability. And even though we're allowed more, it still is, I think, misleading as to what's actually occurring in this site. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that question and the context, the conversation. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, look for public comment.
No hands raised online.
All right, then, I believe this is opportunity for us to give direction to staff. Will you
Yes,
entertain a motion on that?
Second.
Would the maker of the motion also include direction to staff to have those conversations with DWR over the next couple of months as appropriate?
Yep. Good.
The second agrees. All right, we have a first by Gasca, a second by Bailey. We could have a vote, please.
Member Gasca.
Aye.
Member Bailey.
Aye.
Vice Chair Crane.
Aye.
Chair Klein.
Aye. All right, moving to item E, receive update from Larry Walker and Associates on California Department of Fish and Wildlife grant-funded Upper Russian River groundwater dependent ecosystem and interconnected surface water study. We'll go to Audra again.
Great, thank you, Chair Klein. I'm going to just go ahead and adjust my slides so that we can move on to this next topic. So we will be providing an update on key activities that have taken place since the last board meeting that occurred in December 2025. So we've been keeping busy and continuing to make progress. We wanted to give a quick reminder for some of, and also summarize developments here. A reminder that this is looking at the Upper Russian River watershed, but with a focus on interconnected surface water, which means groundwater is very relevant. And most of the focus will be within the Ukiah Valley Basin area, those alluvial zones where there'll be more interaction, we think, between groundwater and surface water. So we're not chasing tributaries up into the Western Hills is kind of the message that we want to get across. And so again, Larry Walker Associates is leading a technical team to carry out this work on behalf of the GSA, and we have gotten started doing so. And we just wanted to sort of simply share some of the study goals These are described in the grant, but just as a reminder that there's going to be field activities that will take place, and we're in the process of starting those soon, and also some model updates. So some other scenarios that will be run to help improve our understanding of what might happen to these interconnected dynamics through time with differing climate, with differing water availability, for example. And so getting out there and characterizing the interconnected surface water dynamics is really a key piece of this. So that's going to be putting in place sensors, making measurements, collecting different samples that will help elucidate the situation. We're going to talk about how we came up with a list of sites, how those sites are going to be prioritized, and hopefully lead us to identify a few key locations in the basin that will be included as part of this study. The other part is we're not only looking at interconnection and interplay between surface water and groundwater, we're also looking at groundwater dependent ecosystems. So that's going to include both riparian vegetation and aquatic species like yellow-legged frog, like steelhead, that tend to be dependent on interconnected surface waters. And again, these field data that will be collected over the next couple of years are filling data gaps that are identified in the GSP and also address recommended corrective actions from DWR, all of which is also beneficial towards greater understanding the basin and showing progress when the GSA submits the periodic evaluation. And then finally, the hope is that improvements in the model and incorporation of some of these observations will allow for better representation of the interplay of interconnected surface waters in the basin. So just like I was saying, there is going to be aspects of biological surveys, hydrological surveys, so measuring water dynamics, interplay between the groundwater elevation and stream water elevation, how that changes through time in different areas in the basin, and then also some geochemical tools. These are just natural tracers that can help elucidate changing water sources through time, and also the relative importance of groundwater to a particular surface water through time. So again, just gives a bit of a sense, and the idea is that we'll plan to get out there and do surveys at least around 3 times a year for 2026 and for 2027. All right, to give a sense of what's happened since project kickoff in October and what's coming up soon this spring. So the last time that this board received an update was December 2025. So since then, there's also been a public webinar, an additional TAC meeting. There have been some other outreach efforts that I'll describe in the next slide. And there's upcoming now some field reconnaissance effort and looking to apply a site prioritization framework that's been developed and approved by the TAC to decide which sites will be targeted for the study. The next phase after site prioritization is to start establishing landowner access agreements after conducting some outreach to different potential partners. And then finally, the goal, really the near-term goal, is to start installing instrumentation and collecting field data. And so that's going to be hopefully coming up a little bit later this spring. All right, again, I just want to highlight some of the key outreach and engagement efforts that were also highlighted in the TAC packet, or I'm sorry, the board agenda packet. So again, we completed one-on-one TAC engagement meetings with all but one of TAC members. We had a conversation, the technical team, with the Nollyville-Pomo Nation Environmental Department staff back in January. Also had a public webinar that was open and had pretty good attendance, open to the public, other interested parties. And then Dakota Perez of Nollyville-Pomo Nation very kindly invited us to present to the Mendocino Lake Sonoma Tribal Environmental Partnership stream team. So we were able to share a bit about the study, its goals, its priorities, and ways that the folks in attendance from different tribal nations might be involved should their leadership choose to do so. And that was done in coordination with Stantec, and we also had GSA staff attending that event as well, which was great. All right, So in looking at the site selection approach, we had to whittle down the various major tributaries in the Ukiah Valley Basin down to just a few sites. So as I sort of flashed on the screen when we were talking about the different types of monitoring that will take place, the goal is to identify and establish monitoring at 3 to 4 tributary sites and up to 4 main stem, so Russian River main stem locations. Unfortunately, just due to time limitations, budget, we cannot monitor everything, but this will still go a long way towards closing data gaps in the basin. It can be a building block for future investigations and projects. So again, we collected desktop information, available data from previous studies, information collected from TAC members, from members of the public who attended the webinar, any tribal input that we received, other community members, and use that to establish a list of sites that we would use and to which we would apply a prioritization framework. And again, there are many different factors that we had to take into consideration, everything from are species of interest, important species dependent on groundwater present, what are some other watershed characterization factors, and then of course, really practical things like access, amenable landowner partners, and whether it was safe to access a site. And so which tributaries ended up on this list for prioritization and screening? You can see that described here. So we had Forsyth, Ackerman, Robinson, McNabb, Mill, Morrison, and then added Doolin and Gibson after public webinar feedback. So all of these will be screened. And again, the goal is to collect data, but at 3 to 4 tributary sites and then 4 main stem locations. When I say main stem, I do also mean West Fork of the Russian River, upstream of the Coyote Dam confluence. All right. So in order to sort of rank and screen these pre-identified tributaries, our team did develop a multi-factor prioritization rubric. So we could kind of go through, consider different hydrologic considerations, water management, ecological resources, and habitat, and kind of rank the locations that were identified. TAC received an update on this and provided their approval during the February meeting. And now the technical team is going through the process right now of actually going through and ranking more generally the tributaries and then drilling down to specific sites that might actually be included in the study. And so some of the next steps, now that you've heard a quick update on what's been going on, is that actually tomorrow, technical team, a subset of us, will be heading up to the Ukiah Valley Basin to do a brief fast and furious recon day. We've been coordinating with City of Ukiah, Ukiah Valley Water Authority, so that we can go visit some of their properties, also a public landowner, a private landowner. So we'll be taking a look in person. That's going to allow us, we hope, to finalize site prioritization. At that point, we'll move on to landowner outreach and engagement, understand who might be willing partners to carry out this project, and then establish access agreements. At that point, we'll be able to move forward with planning instrument installation and start collecting data. So thank you very much for receiving the update and happy to respond to any questions or comments.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Director Bailey?
Yeah, I appreciate that you factored into this tribal engagement, and just curious how those meetings went and whether there were changes in direction or suggestions that came out and further plans for collaborating.
There were a couple of the site streams definitely became included based upon the fact that we learned of the existence of quite a lot of tribal collection by different nations of data. We do not yet know whether or not we will be able to move forward with collaboration or how much of previously collected data can be shared with the technical team, but conversations are in the works with some of the folks, and it'll really come down to the tribal council decisions. But it looks like a possibility, and certainly many nations have done a great deal of data collection in their relevant tributaries.
Director Gasca? Okay. Seeing no other comments or questions from the board, we'll move to public comment.
No hands raised online.
Alrighty, I think that concludes item 4E. Thank you very much, Audra, for presenting that. We'll now move to item 4F, authorization for chair to execute amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with Larry Walker Associates in the revised total amount not to exceed $343,000, and we'll turn it over to our general manager and LWA for the conversation.
Thank you. So we just heard some great reports from Larry Walker and Associates, and we know we're going to be continue to working with them on the grant projects, but the contract that they have with the GSA for their on-call technical services was entered into in August of 25, I believe, and it doesn't line up with the deadline for the periodic evaluation. And so the main focus here and the biggest lift in that work and that dollar amount is the periodic evaluation, which we are mandated to have completed by January of 27. So ideally, we would like to extend the contract for that on-call work to match up with getting us past the submission of that periodic evaluation. Audra and her team did a great job in describing how they're going to move forward in the letter and in the amendment. We've already established standing meetings between myself and her team so that we can be continuously checking in and making sure that we're on target and coordinating everything that needs to be coordinated for the periodic evaluation and for TAC and board meetings. If Audra is still here, if you have questions that I can't answer, she'll be able to address them, but I would urge the board to consider this as a critical component of getting that periodic evaluation done. And Larry Walker and Associates has the expertise and the experience working with this agency in order to provide that service.
LWA has certainly been a good partner to the GSA. We'll look for any board comments or questions. All right, seeing none from the board, is there any public comment?
No hands raised online. No one in the chamber.
All right, I will invite motion or action. Was your mic?
Maybe not. It is.
Now I can hear.
All right, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a first by Director Gasca, second by Director Bailey. If we could go to roll call vote, please.
Member Gasca.
Aye.
Member Bailey.
Aye.
Vice Chair Crane.
Aye.
Chair Klein.
Aye. All right, moving now to item 4G. We have consideration of authorization for the chair to negotiate and execute the Hansford Economic Consulting Fee Setting Services Contract with a 2-year term and 3 one-year options. Discuss annual development of the Groundwater Sustainability Fee Finder web map. And we'll turn to our general manager.
Thank you. The GSA, I believe, has been working with Hansford Economic Consulting for at least the last 3 years, and they also provided all the support on the rate and fee study. Their last agreement ended, and we are due to negotiate a new one. The timing of those agreements expiring is not conducive to the work being done and be able to be provided to the board by the June board meeting to make decisions on any changes. So and the industry standard in discussions with Hansford is oftentimes a 3 to 5 year agreement, allowing them to continue doing that annual review and work. And it seems appropriate to apply that standard to our agency as well. We would still be being able to review the cost each year, but we wouldn't be up against the termination of the agreement like we have been. So The agreement right now that's drafted, it was just a letter that was submitted considering just a 1-year term, but what we would be requesting is to negotiate that into a 2-year term with 3 1-year options to be added to it. And it's up to the board also to discuss and determine whether or not you feel like the interactive GIS-based fee finder information on the website is something that you would like to continue to have updated. The quote I was given from the consultant is $3,000 to $4,000 to do the work annually. It is a big amount of money. I don't know how many people are using it. I'm not able to see the data pull on that. It wasn't updated this past year, and unfortunately it's actually inactive. If you go to the link, it doesn't take you anywhere. So we either need to remove it from the website, or we need to choose to move forward with providing that service to our community, in which case we would be asking for that to be added into part of this agreement. So those are kind of the 2 big things. We would like to negotiate and execute the agreement with the 2 years and 3 1-year options after that, and then we need to know if we are or are not including that interactive fee finder to our website. I think from a staff perspective and my limited experience just now with receiving lots of calls about my fee, why am I getting this? It does still seem that it's new enough that the community is going to be asking. I think we have other tools that we can use to answer those questions, but it's not just pointing them to the website and having them do the work themselves. So for what it's worth, that's the little bit of exposure I've had with it. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, look to the board. Comments, questions? Director Gasca?
Yeah, I'd like to see it come back. I mean,
Okay.
I'm probably a person that does look at it, because I get calls, why am I paying, when am I, and I noticed when it disappeared,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, why didn't we pay for that? And it does help me spell out to people, at least how the fees are tabulated. And it does seem like a lot of money, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things of public transparency, it's really that much. So I would rather see it come back.
Okay.
Director Bailey?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think as the GSA takes on more and more work and continues to charge these fees, that having that public visibility will be helpful. And so just to confirm, like the budget on the attachment is 24,900, and then on the staff report it's 28,000, because that would be including the GSA fee finder map, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then we're approving this 2-year term, and then you'll annually negotiate the cost each year. So we're just committing right now to open up this contract, a budget of $28,000 for the current service term, or current set of deliverables that they're working on. And then each year we'll come back and have that renewed.
Correct, and it might come down a little bit. I just put a little larger of a placeholder in there because she gave us that $3,000 to $4,000 estimate on the fee finder. So once we indicate exactly what we're asking of them, they'll come back at us with a firm number. So.
All right, from my perspective, I definitely think a 2-year contract makes sense for the reasons listed, for the stability and the sake of timing throughout the year. In terms of the GIS web map, it's a hard amount of money for me to justify in terms of using, because I think there are other tools that can help us communicate to the public why their property lands in which category. I'm curious if you were able to find out any information around why it stopped working, like what triggered it to stop working. Because for me, it seems like a lot of money for something to all of a sudden expire and then be committed to paying for it year after year.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the GIS license for the website is what kicked us out. So the data it still exists, but it's licensing us to use it on our website.
So that licensing has been done through the work through Hansford Economic Consulting?
They're the host of it, I believe, and they provide us the plugin for our website.
Would it be possible to explore an option of just updating purely the licensing instead of updating it, it would be the original data, so it wouldn't be updating year to year, but it still would provide the baseline data. And I'm happy to go whatever direction this board wants to go, but I'm just trying to think of something that might be an alternative that doesn't still have, you know, a $5,000 price tag, which really seems unnecessary, even if it's just fielding a dozen phone calls, right? I mean, it is helpful. I like that the public's able to interact with it, but it just seems like a lot of money for 24 phone calls, a dozen phone calls. So
I'm happy to do the research. I don't have the answer to the question. I know in other arenas where we pay for GIS interactive maps, and it is tied to a, you know, a set amount of time that you want it to use it. So
The annual update, I mean, this is to bring it back up online, and then it would, if we didn't pay for that ongoing license fee, it would kind of expire, and the any changes in property ownership or boundaries, then that's kind of where we kept it static and didn't pay the ongoing.
I don't think we can keep it static, and I don't know if anyone can speak to this better than I can, but my understanding is this consultant does the tax roll work and loads it into that model, attaching it to those that GIS shape, and it would be mostly current for that year, except for if someone has changed ownership of their property, but we couldn't keep it live if we didn't pay for that subscription the next year. It might be cheaper to not update the numbers that go into the subscription, if that's what you're asking, and I could look into that. Like, say, for example, we had the same data up for 2 years running, and then we updated it every second year, but we paid for the subscription ongoing. To host it, I could ask that question.
Yeah.
See if there's an option to where we just do the work once every 2 years, but we keep the GIS support live.
Yeah, well, I'm curious, I mean, Adam, you work with our agricultural constituents a lot, and they're ones who are more dramatically affected by the fees that are being charged. So I would kind of look to you if like this is a really helpful tool for communicating to the ag community and for your work, then for me, it's like we go ahead and we get it back live so people can get the information that they need and prevent these calls. But
Yeah. I mean, for me too, it's helpful if I want to be a little proactive and being able to identify if somebody's still paying or not, and especially if they're, say, ripping out a vineyard, and I realize like that they're paying when they could appeal and be removed, that, you know, I would, because that's part of what people expect of me, call them and say, hey, I notice you're still being assessed, you should do this. This is how you do it. Save some money. I mean, I think for Larry, or for Hansford, part of it is that they're paying ESRI for the platform, and then they're putting their data, which we kind of own, but then they're doing it for us. So, I mean, the other option would be to either look to see if it's possible for the city of Ukiah to do that, to take that in, but then it's more work. I mean, it is work.
pay for it either way.
yeah, I mean, and it seems like we have a path forward to get it back live with current information now.
Yeah.
And then as we complete this transition and you're coming on roll, maybe it's something 6 months, 9 months from now we look at going forward.
Yeah.
Have this as an annual cost.
Director Crane?
Would it be appropriate to sign it up again now with the goal of getting these questions answered and then potentially changing the process at the next iteration, or is it more appropriate to continue this to the next meeting when we have some more answers?
From my perspective, it sounds like the board wants to have this tool available. At this point, I'm comfortable moving forward and having, staff work to put this back into place, but amenable to other suggestions.
I would favor getting it back live so that we're able to have that information flow out to our constituents, and then work on what might be another solution where we can have that same visibility the future.
Understood. Thank you.
Second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Director Gasca, a second by Director Bailey. Let's just look for any public comment before we have our vote.
None online, none in the chamber.
Thank you. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Member Gasca, Member Bailey,
Aye.
Vice Chair Crane,
Aye.
Chair Klein.
Aye. All right, and now we will move to item 4H, consideration and possible approval of the City of Ukiah invoices for fiscal year 24-25 and direction on payment for services processes.
Thank you. All right, this is a hot topic. We're hitting the hour mark. Thank you guys we're trying to get through this as a big agenda. So I will be brief and as concise as possible in describing where I think we're at. The City of Ukiah took over the management duties in February of last year. And as I mentioned earlier, there was some difficulties in executing that transition with the consultant, but mostly with the staff member at the City of Ukiah that was in charge of doing that transition and executing it correctly. And so that's where we kind of got into a situation where you guys were not, the board was not receiving invoices, and the gap kept getting bigger is what I understand. So when this became brought to our attention in January of this year, we worked quickly on getting these invoices pulled together and submitted. And my team that I was working with, we copied the same format that West Yost, the consultant, had been doing for the 4 invoices, and used that format to quantify the amount of staff time that was spent on the work done for the GSA, and that amount came in right around $30,000. I'm just going to use round numbers. The agreement with the City of Ukiah, when I reviewed it more closely and met with the chair and vice chair to take a look at it, it actually was for a flat amount of $80,000, and that was supposed to have been quarterly reimbursed to the City of Ukiah and a flat 25% of that amount. So what we're asking for, we think it's only fair that the city charges the $30,000 for last year due to the amount of performance that we provided. And moving forward, we would like to ask for clarity on how to accomplish the billing. There is a little bit of a gap in the directions. I included them in the staff report, but we need some clear communication for how the agency is providing the money back to the City of Ukiah, and we've identified a few other gaps that just are not documented well in the terms of even how we're accounting for county staff time, and because the county's still providing financial support too. So I think the end goal, and this moves into a bigger conversation that we will tackle later, is the financial management and how we want to continue to operate that. One of the most glaring issues that I found in this kind of review and audit is that there has not been an independent CPA audit of the finances for the agency, and that just leaves us exposed, and we need to make sure that we're doing that and protecting the agency and its assets. So one of the first steps would be defining our agreement and then moving into the governance documents and updating the JPA and bylaws. So we'll be working with our legal on doing those and getting those procedures updated. And in order to do that, we need to be able to work on it. So we're asking for approval to finish out last year and move forward using the format of continuing to do quarterly billings. The city would create an invoice and submit it to the GSA for reimbursement along with that invoice would be project code documentation of any staff time spent on it. I mentioned we have city clerk, we have myself, we have team members in finance and water resources that are providing support services. And so we would be making sure that you're able to see how many hours are spent and what that impact is, and anticipate aligning very closely with the budgeted amount, even maybe being quite a bit over the budgeted amount going into this periodic evaluation year. But moving forward with that plan, which was adopted in February of last year, on an ongoing basis, allows the city to allocate resources to perform that work. And it's very fair and protecting of the GSA that you're not going to be exposed to additional expenses for staff time. I'm having to do a pretty big lift right now on getting everything back up and on track to where it was, and would like to not see that impact the overall budget in any way. And I think that kind of covers it at a high level. I'm happy to go into detail and talk about tasks, etc., if you have any questions or would like to discuss.
It's not a question, statement. We supposedly had an arrangement for a fixed amount with payments, 4 payments in the course of a year, allegedly quarterly.
Yes.
And this would cause that to occur going forward.
Yes.
I am aware that this coming year is going to be different than the following year, because the following year has a heavier workload in it that we need to address. So when we budget for the following year, it's my belief that we'll see a higher number than the 80.
Possibly, if
I think it's likely,
okay.
but I want to bring that up because we've got some other work that is periodic every some odd years that needs to occur. So that should be in our minds that that's a likely outcome. If I understand the question that you've asked us, and maybe we can answer it now, is the city to provide this body with quarterly invoices, or is this body to arrange for quarterly payments without being invoiced? Is it that simple?
It is that simple. And we would propose and suggest that the city would provide you with those quarterly invoices. It only makes sense. It would be really hard for the county staff to code and cut a check without an invoice associated with it that has a corresponding contract number associated with it. So I think it was just a miss in the development of the professional services agreement. I think the mechanics were outlined in a broad brush, but not defined to where at a staff level we could actually execute those invoicing procedures, because they simply weren't outlined, and there was just a lack of, I think, understanding on staff side on how to do that, and we would like to define those.
All right, and then another point, audit, third-party audit. My understanding, that's not a component of the funding that is arranged for to the city. So that's something that this body would need to arrange for and pay for separately.
Correct. Yes, it has to be performed on behalf of the County of Mendocino, as they hold the special funds for the agency. So we need to work on how to execute that, but we would recommend, staff recommends, highly recommends building that into the budget so that we can get that work performed. And these would be things that an auditor would have pointed out immediately. So I think we're getting in front of it, which is great, but we'd like to get as much cleaned up as we can now.
So another line item in the budget.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Bailey?
Yeah, I agree that having invoices with the actual time of who's working is important, and thanks for having done that for this past year. I know that we had raised at different points, like how much is the city spending, and we haven't seen any tracking, so
Right.
it's really nice to see that, and I appreciate again that the billing actually reflects the work done. Going forward, we're going to have, saying, more expenses, that it may mean that the flat payment scheme doesn't really work. And so I don't know that us making a decision now on what the language is in the JPA document and the guidance documents is appropriate, because I'm thinking that as we go into this ad hoc budget development process, that we'll be able to call out a little bit more, okay, what is the anticipated swing in costs? Because maybe one quarter it's 120,000 and another quarter it's 50,000. But I think in terms of like getting an audit and providing transparency, having the bills be actually reflective of the work that's happening in that quarter makes sense. I don't know if that works for the city or not. I'm just thinking in terms of like the audit trail and making sure that we, as we communicate out with our constituents, it's like, yeah, well, here's the costs and here's why. And then I would agree that having an audit at some point here and baking that into the next year's budget would be good. But I don't know if on the city side, having a flat rate is something that, I wasn't part of the original negotiations of this agreement, and whether that was something that like the city really needed to have that budget security and know what they were bringing in. But I'm thinking if we had a budget that we developed on an anticipated curve of what the workload is going to be, you would still get that provided security or transparency of what's going to be coming in. Curious.
Director Crane.
My recollection is that we're on the journey that's being proposed, or we were supposedly on the journey that's being proposed to be done in an actual year where it actually occurs. That would provide some sort of a baseline. The city was willing to take the risk of providing a firm price, win, lose, or draw. I think there's an advantage to this body to having that arrangement, which prevents it from inadvertently getting out of hand. And if the city is willing to accept that liability, as long as it's stuff that's in the description of work that the city has signed up for, I'm in favor of the way it's proposed. And then in that period, come up with how we may want to evolve it.
Director Gasca.
Yeah, my recollection to us, we came to that number. It was roughly based on like a scope of work that West Yost was doing that then the city would do instead. And which we didn't get a lot of the things that we wanted to have done. So, I mean, it makes sense to me that, you know, it came in less, but I would have preferred to pay more and get the work that we expected. And so going forward, you know, with the ad hoc, I think we're going to hopefully do the same thing, that, you know, the city you come back with a work plan, like with a basic idea, an estimate of what it's going to take, and then we kind of decide, because, you know, I don't like just a flat fee where somebody's going to win, someone's going to lose, when I'd rather just it be straightforward that, you know, this is what we're offering, this is what we can do for that money. And then our ad hoc would decide, like, well, we want more, or that's going to be a lot more than we really want to pay. And I understand that some things are going to fluctuate year to year, depending on whatever it is we're doing. Like, we're going to have more things to do with, like, the interconnected surface water, groundwater dependent ecosystem study, or with, you know, the 5-year evaluation, and which, I mean, that was identified even in our earlier ad hoc committee meetings. Like, we still have that, I still have that tool. We had, you know, a 5-year projection on a monthly basis of what our expenses would be. So,
but we don't have a base year yet. So I'm advocating that we stay with Plan A and get the base year. After that, both entities have a better understanding of what it's taken.
Well, we have a base here now, because
No, we don't.
No,
No.
so I was able to pull the data that was presented to the board when they approved the agreement with the city of Ukiah, and the comparison was apples to apples. If the city did the work that the consultant was doing, the consultant was going to be charging $143,000 for that work, and the city was proposing to do it for that $83,000 mark. And so I think that's what helped inform that decision when you adopted the agreement with the city of Ukiah. I do know that the city as an agency has had, it gives us, like I said, the amount of confidence to allocate staff time appropriately based on what that estimated budget is. I know it would be changed every year, and we could look at the workload for the year, but I think, I'm proposing as a staff level to stay under that sort of agreement. If we wanted to open it up and take it into a quarterly budget or an hourly budget, we would have to go back to the city council of the city of Ukiah and discuss that with them and get their input on where their comfort level is with city staff performing this work. So,
from my perspective, I appreciate what the city has set up, and the intent is to try to create the stability for both agencies, right? For the GSA and for the city of Ukiah in terms of their staffing and in terms of, the amount that's going to be exchanged. I appreciate that bringing forward, the adjusted amount based off of the limited performance on the contract, right? We know that that wasn't the amount of work that was done over the last year, and so it would be unfair to expect the GSA to pay that amount. What I'm struggling with a little bit is if we're, going to pay a $32,000 bill for what should have been like $35,000 or $85,000, it's what, like 35% of the work. So are we really going to see a jump from 35% of the work to that full 100%? And we just don't know what that actual amount looks like. And so I'm not suggesting we need to change the model at this point in time. I think once we get our feet a little more under us, then perhaps those conversations can be had. But at this point, it's kind of a give and take at this point.
yeah, and I could just also add that we are still getting billed by West Jost because we were still relying on them over that year. So even though the agency's paying the city of Ukiah for their time, we are also paying West Jost. So we weren't able to, it's not like those funds didn't get spent. They were also being spent just on a different consultant doing the work.
Which is frustrating because what was communicated to us by the previous general manager is that was not the case.
I completely concur. Understand.
If we were going to be really judicious about this, I would ask, is it really even fair for the GSA to be paying that, considered it was being reported something completely different?
Right.
And I'm not asking that take place, because what's done is done, and
Understood.
there's a lot of good faith from my perspective. Moving forward, I think we are headed in a better path, but just want to note that for the record.
Understood.
It was completely communicated differently. So.
It didn't go the way it should have. I'll agree on that.
So just to clarify, what you're proposing is we leave the flat billing at the 83,000 per agreement now, but we get an invoice at the end of each quarter that documents what the actual hours worked were, so that we're still getting the visibility of how the work is proceeding, which gives us the information to then, if we decide to alter the agreement in the future, we're still tracking with the project code, the different people that are working.
Exactly. Yes.
We have some data instead of basically.
Yeah.
Right. And then there was the further question in here about the County of Mendocino's reimbursement for staff administrative time. Do you have a proposal for that?
That will be handled when we go into our governance update. Part of the work that Stantec has been working on is taking a look at the bylaws and the mechanisms for all of the financial systems. So that will need to be updated and put into some sort of a formal document so that an auditor can have something to point at. I'm just pointing out that that is an area of exposure, and that's one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that the GSA is protected and all of our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted on all financial matters. It's currently budgeted under the county for that work, so there is a document trail. It's just not linked specifically with a GSA related document.
All right, let's take a moment to go to public comment if there is any.
No hands are raised online, no one approaching the podium in the chamber.
All right, I would look for any motion, action, or direction.
And the chair has the ability to do that too.
I can do it. I'll make a motion to pay the invoice of $31,895.51 and moving forward to get a quarterly bill based on the $83,366 flat fee.
Is there a second?
I just would ask, can we add in that those bills will show the hours worked under the project code, various staff members?
Yeah, and to include, the project codes and tracking.
All right, I
Second it.
believe we have a comment.
Sorry for missing public comment period. Amber Facette, County Mendocino. I just wanted to clarify how we bill our time, because we have a role as a member agency, but then also at doing the partial administrative work, financial work. And so I have two different project codes. I have one project code that I bill anything that we would do just as another member agency, attend TAC meetings, things like that. And then I have a project code that I bill things that I'm solely doing administratively for the GSA. And it has been budgeted always. We don't actually have a services agreement, but it's always been budgeted, and I track and bill actual time spent at my actual paid rate. And so I just wanted to clarify, it's a lot less than it used to be since we've given up a lot of the administrative role. I think off the top of my head, it's maybe like around $5,000 now a year. And that's basically just for reviewing invoices, providing financial reports, things like that. So just wanted to clarify that.
We couldn't do it without her.
And so I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
One I have is just looking at this, the line, no formal process for the County of Mendocino's reimbursement for staff administrative time, nor the amount withheld from the property tax collection.
So we just need to, it would either be in a professional services agreement or some other document. We need to define the amount that's withheld from that collection before it's submitted to the agency. So
Get transparency of that.
we just need to protect, yes, the agency with getting everything on paper.
All right, any other comments, questions? I think we go back to our motion that's on the table. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Member Gaska,
Aye.
Member Bailey,
Aye.
Vice Chair Crane,
Aye.
Chair Klein.
Aye. And I want to thank our general manager for all of her work, as well as Amber Fazette from the county for working through this process. There was good collaboration. I think we came up with a good end result. Okay, we're going to move now. Item 5, consent calendar. The following items are listed. They're routine, enacted by a single motion. They can be removed from the consent calendar upon request of a member. All right. Do we have any items that would like to be pulled for separate consideration? If not, I can entertain a
Move the
motion.
recommended action.
Second?
All right, do we have any public comment on items on the consent calendar?
Seeing none online or in the chamber.
All right, we have a first by Director Crane, a second by Director Gasca. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Member Gasca,
Aye.
Member Bailey,
Aye.
Vice Chair Crane,
Aye.
Chair Klein.
Aye. Thank you. We'll now move to item 6, staff and partner updates. We just, under this item, have updates from General Manager this time.
Thank you. I will keep it brief. I included in the staff report section sort of a summary of what I've been doing as I dug in and audited and connected with all of the different consultants. I included the terms of their agreements. You're going to see a lot of them are going to be coming back at the board in June for renewal. And then if you move past sort of all of those agreements, we're going to touch on the periodic evaluation. I think we don't need to go into too much more detail on that. We will be working with Larry Walker Associates and really rolling up our sleeves. It's definitely time to get that moving. I also attended the Small GSA Coalition meeting last week and wanted to give you a quick summary of the work that group is doing. There is a Pacific Policy Group is the lobbyist that has been retained by the coalition, and Mark Fenstermaker of that is their lobbyist. He updated us on the tracking of the Prop 4 funding and how it's going to hopefully roll out for GSAs. He let us know that there are committee hearings next month for AB 2132, which would provide CEQA exemptions on subsidence recharge projects, and AB 2026, which addresses groundwater recharge diversions without permits or water rights. So they're both being tracked, and he will be voicing his opinion on behalf of the small GSAs. There's also $3.5 million of grant funding going into DWR for small GSAs, anything under that 10,000 acre feet, and he's tracking it but has not seen it rolled out yet. The coalition on a whole basically touched on the periodic evaluation as being everyone's main focus right now. The question was asked, do you think we cannot do these after this year? And the answer was no. So, we're definitely not the only ones feeling the burden of having to do that work, and you know, we're lucky that we don't have a lot of significant issues here, but we still have to pick up that workload. In addition to attending that meeting, one of the consent calendar items was submitting that FPPC form, which I'll route to the chair for getting that on file, because each agency of that coalition contracts with Pacific Policy Group independently, so we have to get on file separate paperwork for them. And the last thing related to the small GSAs is last year, and I'll leave these here for everyone to grab one, there was a fact sheet that was done, and they've asked if everyone appreciated having it, and the consensus was yes, and we would like to update it. So they're asking agency staff to go ahead and update the chart on the back. And so we're going to be getting our costs in for that. And notably, what's not included in the dollar amounts there are the periodic evaluation costs. So you're going to see the numbers there and think, oh, that's not that bad, but it's just compliance. It's not the work being done towards something like a PE. Okay, the website, I have gained control and I have started updating. I would love your feedback. Please email me anything. You guys are much more intimately familiar with it than I am. If you see anything that is a glitch, that isn't working, that you would like updated, please let me know. I am trying to get as many portions of it updated as quickly as possible. So every time I'm on there, I find something, but I'm not clicking through every single layer. So would appreciate any feedback from the board on the website. I have met with Stantec a couple of times. They are contracted with DWR to do work for us for the FSS and the ISP. They've also provided a technical memo which identifies quite a few of the items we've already discussed today in regards to kind of gaps in where we're exposed and don't have all of our procedures documented correctly. So we're going to be doing a lot of work with them in getting product to you for your review and input. And then the last couple of things are just bookkeeping. If I am now appointed general manager, I'm going to be updating the Department of Water Resources portal so that I can gain access to it for reporting and CDFW for the grant. I think one thing I missed in regards to Stantec, one of the main focuses of our work with them is going to be tribal engagement. And at the recent TAC meeting last month, Javier Silva proposed being assigned as an alternate to this board, and we're trying to figure out what the best process is for recruiting this seat so that we have an alternate identified as well. So we're working through that right now. And I think the last thing to note is we have 2 fee appeals in process, so we're working through that process with legal support, and only if we're not able to come to a resolution would it come back to the board. So you guys shouldn't see anything unless we are not able to adequately address those 2 appeals, and then we'll get that to you. So that's a very quick summary of kind of where I'm at, and I'm happy to answer questions if I'm able.
Any questions from the board?
No, just I appreciated the format of that table where you clearly, spelled out what's happening with what agreements, the status,
good.
and all of that.
Well, I'm gonna compliment a great suggestion from the clerk, because I just had this horrible mess of notes. So thank you.
Well, great suggestion on the use of the table.
Thank you very much for the transparency and having a written report. It's just very helpful for us to be able to reference back to as questions arise. An initial response to your question for feedback on the website is the board has been asking for some time to have the agendas and the meeting dates posted onto the website, and would ask that happen sooner rather than later.
The meeting dates are there, but I think one of the last items today is to discuss meeting dates. So I wanted to wait until that action was taken before posting the remainder of the year, but they're ready to go. And the agendas right now link to, we use Civic Plus through the city of Ukiah. So they're linked there. I could easily upload a PDF of the agenda in that same area, and then they could click the live link, which will take them to get the full packet, if that would be helpful.
Yes, please. I looked at it this morning, and at least on the page that I was on, it doesn't actually link. It just says, please visit the city's website.
Oh.
And so,
Okay.
I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that's what I saw. And if we could upload a PDF and then also include the link, I think that's beneficial use. From my perspective, I want to make sure that, the transparency of 2 separate entities is still maintained. I think it's great to still have it hosted on the city's website as well. More places, probably the better.
Perfect.
I found the same thing as the chair today. And I think rather than move it as a PDF, if there's a way to simply link it, then there's never 2 different versions.
Okay, I will look into that. Happily.
That's just me, not the body.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Dr. Bailey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like you're operating from this, but I'm just thinking it's the general principle that as a standalone agency, having the website be reflective of the breadth of the work that we're doing and technical reports, anything that the agency itself is producing should have the source be our website, and mirroring on the city's website. It seems like it's been the city's website and then some stuff gets put to the site, but just, in line with being that independent agency, that we make sure we have the website as a source where somebody who's from outside the area and doesn't know about, I've got to go to the city website to get this. It's important to do.
Yeah, I agree.
About resources.
Question. Do we care where it's actually hosted, or do we care that it's very clear path to get it from this agency's website?
being as cost efficient as possible is always important, but if there's clear, for me, and this is just my thought, if there's clear links to all of the critical information so that you can go to our website as the source and then get to everywhere that you need to in a clear way, we don't need to like duplicate effort and run into extra costs because we're hosting in 2 different places. And I'm not an IT guy, I know how those costs all function, but just making sure that our website, as somebody goes there and has the ability to get to everything they need.
We're in
From
agreement.
my perspective, that information about the GSA needs to be hosted on the GSA's website. And I want to amend my statement about there not being a link. There is a link. You click it and it does not take you specifically to any agenda. So that's what I was trying to articulate is you do have to search through all of the agendas that are posted on the city's website, which for someone who doesn't normally navigate the myriad of agendas, that might be complicated and kind of a barrier to accessing information. So I would prefer to have them hosted on the GSA's website, but this isn't something we expect to have updated tomorrow, and we can work through what the best process is.
Thank you. Yeah, those are IT questions that I can't answer. I do know that if we're using the Civic Plus platform, there are some limitations on how we can link that to an outside area.
I think we can embed the links on the primary.
Oh, that would be
site.
great. Yes. So see, possible.
Great. All right, I think that concludes our conversation about the general manager's report. We will move to item 7, future agenda items and setting the next meeting date. Our next meeting is set for June 11th at 1 p.m. at the county offices. Are there any issues with the timing of our board meetings for any of our members?
You said June 11th, I'm just double checking my calendar.
Yep, June 11th, 2026 at 1 p.m.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move forward with the schedule as previously set up. And is there any direction to staff in terms of agenda items for future meetings?
I'm sorry. Could we look at the remainder of the calendar year for dates, because we're going into the periodic evaluation and needing to schedule with Audra for making sure we hit your meetings in line with the actions that they need to take for the periodic evaluations, and it would be really helpful, if at all possible, to just take a quick look at those meetings. Right now, I think they're penciled in for August 13th and November 12th, and those would be critical dates for us to accomplish some of those items. And wondering if we could take a look at that really quickly. There's also the possibility of needing to coordinate a joint meeting with the TAC, depending on how the periodic evaluation is going and how that timeline lines up. So just trying to make sure we have time in between your meetings and the TAC meetings to where we can coordinate those if needed.
Can you repeat the second one, not the August 13th? But
November 12th.
Yep, I have those.
All right, sounds like those work for the board.
Thank you. Sorry.
And I did not hear any agenda items for future meetings. If anything comes up, please reach out, send a note to our general manager. All right, with that, we will adjourn at 2:40 p.m. Cover some ground.
Recording stopped.